Somewhere in every room full of people, there's one person who isn't really in the room. They're smiling. They're nodding along. But part of them is somewhere else, watching, measuring, quietly deciding whether any of this actually matters. You've met this person. You might be this person. Psychologists have a name for it. Some call it high emotional maturity. Some call it an old soul. But strip away the labels, and what you're really looking at is a mind that started aging differently than everyone else's, a mind that, somewhere along the way, skipped a few years of noise and went straight to clarity. This isn't about IQ. This isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about something quieter and, honestly, something rarer. Here are 7 signs your mind is operating a decade ahead of the people around you, and why that's both a gift and a burden most people never talk about. Most people are wired to recharge socially. A party, a group chat, a night out, for the average mind, noise equals energy. But somewhere along your development, that wiring flipped. You noticed it first as a kid, maybe when a birthday party left you more tired than a full day alone. You noticed it again as an adult, when a fun night out started feeling like a withdrawal from a bank account you never agreed to open. This isn't social anxiety. It isn't shyness. It's something psychologists describe as a shift in stimulation threshold, a nervous system that processes input more deeply, which means it also tires faster under shallow, high-volume interaction. Here's the part nobody tells you. This isn't a flaw to fix. It's a filter. While other minds are seeking stimulation, yours is seeking signal. You don't want more conversations. You want conversations that mean something. And when you find one, you go all in. That's not antisocial. That's selective. And selective is expensive because it means you say no to 100 shallow rooms to protect your energy for the one deep conversation that actually changes you. The average mind fills its calendar to avoid being alone with its own thoughts. Your mind fills its solitude because your thoughts are actually worth spending time with. Walk into any group setting and you'll spot 2 types of people almost instantly. The first type talks to think. They process out loud, filling silence because silence feels like a vacuum that needs to be occupied. The second type thinks to talk. They sit back. They read the room. Who's anxious, who's performing, who's telling the truth, and who's managing an image. By the time they speak, it's not filler. It's already been filtered 3 times. If you've ever been called quiet in a way that felt slightly wrong, like people mistook observation for absence, this is you. This trait shows up early. Old souls were often the kids who preferred listening to adults talk over playing with kids their own age, not because they didn't fit in, but because there's a myth that emotional sensitivity is a liability, that the people who cry easily, who feel things deeply, who get hit hard by other people's pain, are somehow less equipped for the real world. The research says the opposite. High sensitivity is consistently linked to higher empathic accuracy, the ability to correctly read what someone else is actually feeling, not just what they're pretending to feel. It's linked to deeper moral reasoning, because people who feel consequences more intensely tend to think through consequences more carefully before acting. If you've ever felt embarrassed for crying at a random moment, a stranger's story, a scene in a film, a memory that resurfaced out of nowhere, understand what's actually happening underneath that. Your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It's running a more complete simulation of the situation than the people around you who felt nothing. Old souls don't have thinner skin. They have a wider bandwidth for input, and that input, grief, joy, injustice, beauty, doesn't get filtered out before it reaches something real inside them. That's not fragility. That's full resolution living, while most people are watching life in low definition. The cost is real. You feel more, so you hurt more. But the trade is that you also understand more, connect more honestly, and rarely get blindsided by people because you were reading them accurately the entire time. Watch what people spend their conversations on, and you'll learn everything about where they are in their development. Some people can't stop talking about what they have, the car, the title, the number in the bank account, the version of themselves they've built for an audience. It sounds like confidence. Often, it's compensation. A mind that's still trying to prove something to a room is usually a mind still carrying an old wound it hasn't looked at directly. An old soul isn't impressed by the performance. And more importantly, isn't performing one either. Status stopped being the goal somewhere along the way. Not because you gave up on ambition, but because you outgrew the version of ambition that needs an audience to feel real. This shows up as a strange kind of freedom. You can sit across from someone with 10 times your resources and feel nothing but neutral curiosity because your sense of worth was never tied to comparison in the first place. Meanwhile, people who are still running the status race read your calm as either arrogance or naivety, when really, it's just that you finished a race they haven't realized they're still running. The goal shifted quietly from having more to becoming more. And once that shift happens, it doesn't reverse. Ask most people what they did with their weekend, and you'll get a list of things that filled the hours. Ask an old soul, and you'll usually get a shorter, quieter answer, because time isn't something to fill. It's something to spend deliberately. Like currency, you only get once. This isn't about productivity culture or optimizing every minute of the day into a task list. It's the opposite, actually. It's the ability to sit in stillness without needing to escape it because you're not running from your own mind. You're using the quiet on purpose. People with this trait tend to notice, almost physically, when time is being wasted on something that isn't building anything. A relationship going nowhere, a job that stopped teaching them anything years ago, a habit that numbs instead of nourishes. And instead of tolerating it the way most people do, they quietly, sometimes uncomfortably, choose to leave. This is what elevating your life actually looks like in practice. Not a slogan, a daily, sometimes painful audit of where your hours are going and the discipline to redirect them towards something that will still matter in 10 years. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from unresolved anger, grudges people carry for years, arguments they replay on a loop, people they haven't forgiven not because forgiveness would help the other person, but because it would finally release them. Old souls tend to arrive at forgiveness earlier, not out of weakness, but out of a calculated understanding that carrying resentment is a tax paid to someone who's no longer even in the room. This doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean tolerating harm. It means refusing to let someone else's worst moment keep renting space in your mind for years afterward. This maturity usually comes from having been hurt enough, early enough, to learn the lesson the hard way. That bitterness doesn't punish the person who caused it. It punishes the person who holds on to it. This might be the clearest marker of all. Most people optimize for being liked, broadly, safely, by as many people as possible. It feels good in the short term. It also means shrinking yourself into a version that's easy to approve of. An old soul optimizes for something slower and harder to find, being understood. Not liked by everyone, understood by the right few. That trade-off is uncomfortable because it means you will sometimes be misread, misjudged, or simply overlooked by people who wanted an easier, more agreeable version of you. But it also means the connections you do build are real because they were never built on a performance in the first place. None of these 7 signs mean you're better than anyone else. They mean you're further along a particular kind of development, one that isn't about intelligent scores or achievements, but about how deeply you process the life you're actually living. The world rewards speed, noise, and performance. It rarely rewards depth until the moment someone finally needs it. A real conversation, a real decision, a real crisis where the shallow answers don't work anymore. If you recognize yourself in even 3 or 4 of these signs, understand this. You're not behind. You're not too much. You're not broken for needing silence, for feeling too deeply, for outgrowing rooms that used to fit you. You're early, and eventually the world catches up to people like you. It just takes it about 10 years.